Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us in our webinar series. Today we welcome Federico, who is going to tell us about his amazing conservation project in Argentina. Thank you very much, Fede, for your time, and the space is all yours.
Thank you, Maria. I will share my presentation in a second. Are you seeing the presentation? It's okay?
Yes.
Well, I will start by saying thank you to the Amphibian Specialist Group for giving us the opportunity to share our work with this incredible species, the Valcheta frog, in Argentina. I am not alone in this enterprise, of course. We are a team of committed people. Our team is composed by Hernan, Sofia, Mel, Igor, and Rolo. And we are working together for the conservation of the whole biodiversity of an incredible region in Argentina, the Somuncura Plateau. And in this region, you have these three endemic and endangered species, the Valcheta frog, the naked characin, and the Somuncura frog. Because the importance of the region and these species, we decided to start working in 2012 with, at that time, we were part of an initiative that was called Wild Plateau Initiative, Meseta Salvaje, Iniciativa Meseta Salvaje. And our main goal was conserving the biodiversity of the whole region, the Samuncura Plateau, which is located in Patagonia, but with focus on these three endemic and endangered species. But later, we decided to create a small NGO, the Fundación Samuncura, that was like starting activities in 2020. And because the relevance of the Valcheta frog, we decided to use this species as flagship of the conservation process we are conducting in the region. So since the very beginning of this work, we were applying a classical conservation cycle. As you probably know, the conservation cycle is based on these three main stages: the assessment, the planification, and the action stages. And also you have two like transversal components, one of communication and one of networking, that we are also addressing in the frame of the big project. So when we started working with the Valcheta frog, there was a previous assessment in the IUCN, in the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And this species, the Valcheta frog, was already listed as in one of the more critical categories, the critical endangered category. But because this assessment was like too old, it was finished in 2004, we decided to make a new assessment, a reassessment, as the start point of this project. And also, beyond the categorization of the IUCN, I think that it is worth also mentioning that the Valcheta frog at that time was the only amphibian in our country, in Argentina, that was included in the H rank in the top 100 priority species of this uh, ranking method used by the Zoological Society of London that considers not only the conservation status, but also the evolutionary uniqueness of the species to build this rank. And in this rank, the only Argentinian amphibian that fall within the top priority species worldwide was the Valcheta frog. So to start this reassessment, we started conducting exhaustive and extensive surveys covering the whole range of the species. It is worth mentioning that the Valcheta frog is endemic to the Samucura Plateau. If you see the map of your left side, you can see the location of the Samucura Plateau in yellow in the national context of our country, Argentina. And the Samucura Plateau is an incredible place full of beautiful landscapes and endemic and native species, and is a large region. Is for you to understand the size, is almost the size of Belgium, and it rises like a kind of continental island in the middle of the Patagonian steppe. And in one of the edges of this big volcanic area, you have this small stream, the Valcheta stream. And this is a particular stream because it burns at hot springs. And for this reason, the headwaters are warm all the year, which is something uncommon for a Patagonian stream. And another peculiarity of this stream is that it's an endorheic water course, which means that it starts and ends without any contact to other water course, nor with the sea. So it's an isolated water course. So you have this isolated region, the Samucura Plateau, and in this region you have this isolated water course, which is an incredible water course because it has warm waters all the year. And all these conditions allowed the evolution of this frog and also other endemic species like the naked characin and some freshwater snails. So in the frame of this reassessment, one of the team members, Dr. Melina Velasco, conducted her PhD that was based on the ecology and population dynamics of the species. So we got like a high quality scientific information to understand what was happening with this frog. And we found that by 2012, there were only 7 extant local populations living in the wild, and 3 local populations went extinct in recent decades. So in this map, you can see the headwaters of the stream. In yellow, you can see the extant local populations, and in red, some populations that went extinct in recent times. And in the green circle, you can see the biggest local populations of these frogs that were discovered in the frame of this reassessment. So at that time, we were wondering why these local populations and some local populations went extinct. which was the main cause. And we found that in the case of the Valcheta frog, at least the main cause of the extinctions of these small and isolated local populations was due to the impact of livestock that trample and feed on native vegetation, causing the loss and the fragmentation of the habitats for frogs. But also, we saw that these local populations were isolated, and we were wondering also why these local populations are restricted to just a bunch of small portions of habitats, and why they don't occur in the whole stream, even when you have like good kind of suitable habitats in the mainstream. I mean, the parts of the stream you see in light blue color. And this question was really easy to answer, and the cause was this, guys. This is the rainbow trout. It is an exotic and invasive species that was introduced in the mainstream in 1920 and rapidly became the top predator of the whole system, pushing the frogs and the characins to these isolated habitats. But the trout cannot access to these last refuges because the existence of some small waterfalls that are impeding the colonization of trout to these last refuges for the endemic species. So this is a picture of the situation we found when we started working there. You have the rainbow trout that pushed the endemic species, not only the frogs, but also the characins and some freshwater snails, to these small and isolated refuges of habitats where frogs were expected to thrive there because the absence of trout. But even there, they were declining because the impact caused by the livestock that caused the habitat loss due to the loss of vegetation that is very important for frogs reproduction. So again, as a result of this reassessment, we found that they were only 7 extant and small local populations of frogs, at least 3 of them already extinct. All these local populations isolated by trout, so without connection among them. And the good news is that the trout still cannot access to these last habitats because the existence of these small waterfalls, but these last habitats are being impacted by livestock. So as the final result of this reassessment, we reconfirmed the critical endangered status for this species, and we decided to start actions to recover these populations and to restore and reestablish the meta-population dynamics of these frogs. So we started with the next step of the conservation cycle that is based on planning, and we decided to apply a logical framework approach. So we started like conducting workshops with different stakeholders from the academic institutions, the environmental governmental authorities, and the local farmers. And with all this information, we built a logical framework, a problem tree that we then turned it into an objective tree. And all this data were put together in the first action plan for the Valcheta Frog, where we recognized some key actions to start working for the conservation and the recovery of the species, with the overall goal of ensuring the long-lasting viability of the whole population of this frog. And as main actions, we found habitat restoration, enhancement of corridors, and the recovery of the local populations. So we started putting attention of some fragmented habitats. Some habitats, as I said before, were highly impacted by livestock, so we decided to create enclosures to promote the restoration of the vegetation that is key for the frogs for reproduction. And here you can see the before and the after of these enclosures, because these habitats are like upstream from natural waterfalls. You don't have the problem of the trout there. So by putting these enclosures, we also removed the impact of the livestock. And you can see how the vegetation that became recovered in full in the right picture. And this is an incredible good habitat for frogs, for the reproduction and for sheltering. So we call these sectors of the stream as sanctuaries because they are free of threats, fully free of threats. And then we started also an ambitious program for managing the trout, to eradicate the trout, at least, from the headwaters of the stream. So to start working on that, we decided to increase natural waterfalls, as you can see in these pictures, by using natural materials from the area, like rocks and trunks. And then we started like removing trout from these fish barriers to upstream to clean portions of stream, removing all the trout there by using electrofishing, but also chemical management with rotenone. But at that time, we realized that because the trout problem, it can be solved, but only in a middle term or long-term period. So we decided to address the problem of natural recolonization of frogs to the restored habitats by creating an ex situ facility and establishing there a captive assurance survival colony of this species. It is worth mentioning that this management action was fully supported by the Amphibian Arc and also the Fundación de Historia Natural Félix de Azara. And it was the first ex situ project in Argentina for an endangered amphibian. So we started these ex situ facilities in the University of La Plata, but now they are working in the Ecoparque of Buenos Aires, the old Buenos Aires Zoo, where they are working in partnership with us, conducting all the ex situ management of these species. So we translocated almost 60 frogs there, and we started breeding them. And in September 2016, we got the first individuals born in captivity. So we marked them with visible implant elastomers. And then in 2017, we conducted the first reintroduction of froglets born in captivity in one of these restored habitats where the previous population of this frog went extinct in the past. So we invited the local school and the environmental authorities to help us to release the frogs in this incredible restored habitat. After exhaustive monitoring, after the first release of frogs in this habitat, 1 year before, we saw the first generation of froglets born in the wild from the reintroduced individuals, and this allowed us to confirm the reestablishment of the local populations that already used to live there. And this was also the first case of a successful reintroduction of endangered amphibians in our country. So we escalate these management actions, and between 2020 and 2025, we released more than 5,000 individuals for captivity in at least 5 restored habitats. So this is the situation of the species in 2012. We put more of our effort in this portion of the stream, in the western tributaries of the stream. And after almost a decade of work, we conducted 8 reintroductions in at least 3 restored habitats. We observed the full reestablishment of at least 1 local population, which means an increase of more than 5% of the whole population of the species. We created 15 sanctuaries, and as you can see, the light blue portions of the stream are the sites where we applied trout eradication management actions, achieving the cleaning of at least 4 kilometers of stream that are now free of trout. And in one of the portions of the stream where we conducted this trout management, we started, after we removed all the trout, we started seeing froglets occupying again this portion of the stream. So by now, in 2025, I can say that we have 20 reintroductions in 5 restored habitats. 3 of these local populations were fully reestablished. I mean, they are like breeding in these habitats by itself. And all this work means an increase of more than 15% of the whole population of this endangered frog species. But also in 2020, we got support from the World Land Trust NGO, and they helped us to acquire some land that is protecting local populations of the Valcheta frog, but also the other endemic native freshwater species. In 2022, we bought the first property of 8,000 hectares, and we created the first effective protected area based or focused on an endemic frog species by the first time. Now we have a biggest area of almost 20,000 hectares that is covering almost 35% of the current range of the Valcheta frog and the naked characin. but of course we are more ambitious, and by 2030 we expect to cover all this portion of the stream. I mean, all the headwaters, covering the entire range, which will mean an increase of the population of this species by more than 100%. To achieve this, we have to build a permanent fish barrier in the fork. When you see that the both tributaries of the stream come together, in this point, we have to create a big fish barrier to avoid the access of any new trout to the headwaters. By this way, we can ensure all the headwaters free of trout. And also, we expect to cover a big portion of this area by acquiring more land and turning them into protected areas. All these activities will ensure the long-lasting viability of the Valcheta frog, but also the naked karasine. And we think that all this work is necessary to downlist the species from their current IUCN threat category from critical endangered at least to the vulnerable category. So this is quite a summary of what we are doing there. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Fede. There are some questions at the chat, and Kelsey has her hand raised. So, Kelsey, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Fede, for a wonderful presentation. Very great example of successful conservation. My understanding, Fede, is that you completed a green status of species assessment for this species. Did you find what were the most interesting results in looking at the conservation impact of this work and the conservation potential? What was the most surprising result of that effort?
For us, I think that the increase of the population by 15% is a very good impact in terms of conservation, because we are talking about a critically endangered species. But also by now we already know which of the conservation actions we are conducting really work for the conservation of the species. So we just have to escalate what we are doing. But I think that the combination of ex situ and in situ management actions was the key for the species to achieve this increase in the population.
Yeah. I could ask another question if nobody is ready for their question. And I'm interested to understand more about the barrier for the whole watershed. So is this maybe a barrier that doesn't allow trout, but it allows there's connectivity for the other native species through this barrier? Is that right? Because there's other
Yes,
fishes.
yes, but this is something very complex to to do because some local people is in favor of having trout in the stream, so it's like a negotiation. We have
course.
to ensure the historical habitat of the endemic species, but the good news is that like, let me show you in the map. So all the endemic species, the historical range of the endemic species was represented by the headwaters, and this is because the thermal features of the stream, because it starts at hot springs and you have warm waters, but just in the headwaters. And because that, all the endemic species only occur in the headwaters. So by putting the last fish barrier in this point, you can ensure that the individuals from this part of the stream or from these tributaries can be connected with the ones in this part of the stream. So we have to ensure that this point is like can act as a corridor. But because many people want to continue having trout in the stream, we negotiated this point as the point where, okay, you can have like trout water down from this point, because for us it's important to keep safe this portion of the stream, which was the historical range of endemic species.
Yes, very, very, very complicated with the social part, the human
Yes,
part. Thank
yes,
you.
yes. Because also in Argentina, the trout fishing has some like economical impact for tourists. So it is very hard to convince some people about like removing all the trout. But in biological point of view, by ensuring just the headwaters of the stream, we can ensure the long-lasting viability of the endemics and to keep like the corridors working to connect the western and eastern local populations.
Incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Fede. We have two questions at the chat. And
Ah,
the first one is from Theodora. And she says, I was wondering if there is a detailed report available on the activities you have carried out.
I don't know if there is one report covering all the activities, but we have a lot of like scientific papers and also other more public documents that are documenting all the work that we are conducting in the area. I can share all these documents with you if you want. But yes, all the information is like in different documents that we can share.
Thank you. The other question is, thank you very much for this inspiring presentation. I really appreciated the approach you used for habitat restoration. After the reintroduction of the species into the restored habitat, was the adaptation successful right away, or did you need to implement additional actions to support the population?
It depends on because we are like now, one of the team members, Rodrigo, is conducting his PhD based on the evaluation of the reintroduction activities. And we saw that in some restored habitats, the reintroduction was really successful by the first reintroduction attempt. But in other portions of the stream, we didn't have success. So the frogs, that population wasn't reestablished. So we have like different situations, and we are studying which are the main factors that are like determining the success or not of the reintroductions. In some portions of the stream, we conducted like, I don't know, 4 or 5 reintroductions attempts without success, and in other portions with just one reintroduction event, we guarantee the full reestablishment of the local population there. But in the frame of these studies of Rodrigo Calvo, we are like understanding in more detail which is the main reason of the success or not of the reintroductions. And we are seeing that the microhabitat features has like a lot of impact in the success of these actions.
Thank you. And I also have a question. So I find it very inspiring that you're doing this like integrative work, right? Like habitat and also ex situ activities. And I know that you worked with several institutions. So how hard was it to incorporate different institutions to promote this project?
It wasn't hard for us at all. All these institutions were helping us. I have to name some of them: the Amphibian Specialist Group, the Amphibian Arc, the Amphibian Survival Alliance, World and Trust, Whitley Foundation, Rafford Foundation. All these institutions are very supportive with this work, and they are working with us as partners since the very beginning of this project. And we count on them because it's very complex to save a species from extinctions, and it's like a work, in my point of view, we are doing together with these institutions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or write them down at the chat. Okay, and if there are no more questions, thank you very much everyone for joining in. Feel free to follow Fundación Somogura on their social media, and also reach out to Fede if you have any more questions. And thank you very much again for joining us. I hope to see you all on the next one.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.